I've been waiting my whole life for this one. Orthopedic surgeon and husband for The View host Sunny Hostin has been named in a federal lawsuit alleging insurance fraud.
In the criminal case, now the prosecutors are like, oh, really? Well, how about we add some additional fraud charges onto you? And they're talking about threatening him with insurance fraud, which I would say you could get about 20 years in prison. I agree with mostly everything that's been said. I mean, we know that, only about 31% of Americans trust our healthcare system. We have a terrible healthcare system. And, doctors suffer because of big corporations as well. Doctors that want to do good, like my husband, operates on someone even though they don't have insurance.
People have to wonder, where does Sunny Hostin get her opinions? Yeah. Like you said, it's obviously from her husband. She has to tell her what to say on The View, because without it, she's got nothing.
She is not implicated in the lawsuit at all, but it's just, I mean, you're married, Tom, you're married. If your husband's doing something, if he's allegedly doing something like this, you guys would know if your wives were up to some nefarious stuff. But let's just not forget who she is. She's been, for years, lecturing America about morality, inequality, systemic failures, and look at her track record. How many times does she have to go on in the past 2 months and look at the camera and do a legal apology for all the stuff that she said on the show?
Picture this. You're living in $1 million home, sipping your oat milk latte, and lecturing America on ethics, race, and injustice from your cozy spot on TV, when suddenly, boom, your personal life explodes in front of millions. That's exactly what happened to Sunny Hostin, one of the leading voices on The View. The twist? It wasn't even her who got caught, it was her husband. Sunny's husband, an orthopedic surgeon, is now at the center of a shocking federal lawsuit accused of being involved in insurance fraud, and not just a minor case of it either.
Brains are small, but who's the dumbest one of all? True, none of them are in Mensa, but who's the most densa? Perhaps it's Sunny who mastered the art of making idiots look smart. Now, The View could ask a mirror who's the dumbest one of all, but there's no way that glass doesn't shatter.
We're talking about a disaster that could reach 450 million. This isn't a mistake, it's a financial nuclear bomb. And while Sunny's name doesn't appear on the court documents, the internet lit up like Times Square, all because of her constant lectures on morality, privilege, and systemic issues. The moment this news broke, people weren't just talking about her husband, they dragged her straight into the spotlight. Why? Because she built her entire brand on being the voice of reason and justice, and now that image is falling apart fast. By the way, before we continue, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us grow and bring you more intriguing stories.
The problem is that you have to go after the racist people, and be the CEO goes, you know what, I'm not going to allow a woman on my show, or man, that will go after white America and talk about them like dogs. That doesn't represent our ideals or values for anyone. And get rid of those people, and this will clear up real quick. So do you have to actually look in the mirror and clean up your own backyard and get the racist people out? Because that's who you allowed in. You allowed black racist on TV who could just go all day and say anything about white people. And I guess lo and behold, they forgot that there's a lot of people at home, white people at home during the day, that are not watching your show anymore. So just clean it up.
Yeah, Emily.
For now, let's continue. Here's where things really start to heat up. While the lawsuit itself is explosive, what truly ignited the internet was the reaction, especially from Gutfeld and Tyrus, who didn't just comment on the scandal, they went all in, dragging Sunny through the mud with sarcasm so sharp it could cut glass.
So that makes Sunny Hostin, who thinks climate change caused the solar eclipse, the dumbest of them all. Because everyone knows the moon caused the eclipse, which is controlled by The View's gravitational pull. All right, Kat, did you ever see such a group? It's amazing how Joy and Whoopi became the smart ones.
They didn't whisper it, they shouted it on national TV, and they weren't just mocking her husband's alleged fraud, they were aiming directly at her. Gutfeld, always quick with the punchlines, painted Sunny as the queen of moral superiority, lecturing the world about values while her own house was going up in financial flames.
It's not even that. And The View, you don't need to find Trumpers. You need to fire your race baiters.
Yeah.
You need to fire the two racists. You've had people. You had a McCain on there. You've had people on there before, and you ran them off. So the racist ones who want to stick to this, Whoopi and Sunny, and the, was it Bette Midler? What's her name? Yeah, broke-ass Bette Midler. Fire them and bring people in. Maybe you could get McCain to come back. She was a Republican, but every show and every break, she was nearly in tears because she was being attacked.
He said, watching her talk ethics now is like getting relationship advice from the cast of Jersey Shore. That one stung, but then came Tyrus, and he doesn't do soft punches. Tyrus leaned back, calm and deadly, and asked what everyone else was thinking. How can someone spend years telling the rest of us how to live while ignoring a $450 million disaster in her own living room?
Hostin's obsession with race gets thrown back in her face. Today's video comes to us from Sunny Hostin. Sounds like a town. We're in Sunny Hostin. She was on PBS's Finding Your Roots, a show dedicated to researching celebrity ancestry. For context, Sunny is a staunch supporter of reparations and has made a fortune spewing nonsense about white privilege and racial justice. Well, turns out she's not as oppressed as she claims she is. She's actually the descendant of slave owners from Europe. And it is funny, she's so wrapped up in identity and she had no idea who she was.
And here's the kicker. He called out the entire show, The View, labeling it a fake performance. A stage where fake outrage and phony morals are dressed up for daytime TV. This wasn't just about Sunny anymore. It became about exposing the entire illusion of elite media, pretending to be the public's moral compass, and from there, things only got uglier.
Sausage maker Johnsonville is recalling more than 42,000 pounds of pork sausage for possible contamination with plastic fibers. Fortunately, authorities were able to track all 42,000 pounds to a single location in New York City.
Greg and Tyrus didn't stop at pointing fingers. They dismantled Sunny's reputation piece by piece. Tyrus took it even further by bringing up something deeply personal, Sunny's obsession with race and identity. He reminded viewers that she built her platform on calling out white privilege, demanding reparations, and lecturing America on racial justice. But then he dropped a bombshell. Sunny, who often plays the victim card on national TV, is actually a descendant of European slave owners. That part hit hard, and it wasn't just ironic. It felt like the very foundation of her entire public image had cracked wide open.
Sunny gets the game ball. If it wasn't for her, if it wasn't for her asking that question, it might have been a closer election. But when oh no, nothing really comes to mind, I was like, cha-ching. Listen, they're bitter, they're angry, they're entitled. They also should be, this should have been a reset for everyone who pushed lies and misinformation for the last, they call them Hitler, they call these things, America rejected them. And instead of coming back and saying, we lied, they instead are now doubling down. So let her keep doing it, because if she keeps that up, we're going to keep getting the Senate and probably the House and the White House, because people see right through your lies. So keep doing what you're doing. Game ball to Sunny.
And while this revelation was shocking, it wasn't the only reason people started raising eyebrows. Tyrus called her out for being so wrapped up in performative outrage that she completely missed the chaos exploding in her own life. He described her as the perfect symbol of elite cluelessness, too busy adjusting her halo to notice her family's finances were sinking like the Titanic. Meanwhile, Sunny kept showing up on The View as if nothing happened. Same smug tone, same moral superiority, and that's when it really started to feel insulting. How could someone who lectures the world on justice have nothing to say when her own house is buried in legal trouble?
She had to tell the audience that she tips big because even she knows she sounds insufferable. Hey, I'm an but at least I tip. This dame probably virtue signals on the toilet. But that's not the point here. While everybody else was trying to figure out how to survive as the government told us that breathing in public could kill us, Sunny was lolling around in her big house clicking on pictures of arugula while mixing Cocoa Puffs into her Haagen-Dazs. Oh, the oppression. I wonder if she wiped down the groceries herself or had her maid do it. She tips her too.
This wasn't just a scandal, it was a meltdown of public trust. And Sunny was still standing in the middle of it, pretending everything was fine. But it didn't stop with just the hypocrisy. The internet smelled blood in the water and went full shark mode. Memes flooded the web, with one showing Sunny holding a Bankruptcy for Dummies book while wagging her finger at the camera.
Calls her a 10. I mean, how dare she objectify a woman with a sexist rating system, but it's such a typical thing from a 1.5.
Well said.
Jokes about her giving financial advice while her husband was allegedly burning through hundreds of millions like firewood flooded social media, roasting her like it was a national sport. And Greg kept fueling the fire, joking that the next season of The View might be sponsored by GoFundMe and foreclosure notices. People weren't just laughing, they were cheering, because to them, this wasn't just a scandal, it was justice. For years, they'd watched shows like The View talk down to regular people pretending to be untouchable. Now, one of its stars had become the punchline of the year. Then came Tyrus again. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He just hit her with another brutal truth. If you're so busy criticizing everybody else's house, maybe don't. Build your own out of bounce checks and borrowed time. The message was clear. You can't stand on a moral pedestal and ignore the mess under your feet. And in Sunny's case, that mess was $450 million deep and growing louder by the day.
People have to wonder, where does Sunny Hostin get her opinions? Like you said, it's obviously from her husband. She has to tell her what to say on The View, because without it, she's got nothing up there. She's not very bright. But the problem with her is that she went full racist. She injected skin color into a fairly generic behavior seen in all spouses, regardless of skin color. People marry, they listen to each other, they have something in common with them, they share their political views. She just didn't want to upset her husband by saying her husband makes her do everything, and then she'd have to accuse him of being a racist. Because if he told her that this is what white women do, then he's a racist. You see?
And while the internet roared, The View tried to act like nothing was wrong. The other hosts circled the wagons around Sunny, diving into full damage control mode. No apologies, no accountability, just more over-the-top preaching, as if the audience didn't already know the elephant in the room was stomping on the furniture. One co-host even played the sexism card, claiming the backlash against Sunny was only happening because she's a woman, as if a man losing almost $500 million wouldn't spark the same outrage. It was a masterclass in denial, and the more they doubled down, the worse it looked. Greg and Tyrus didn't let up. Greg mocked the absurdity of Sunny still attacking billionaires on air, while her own family looked like the plot of Ocean's 11 IRS edition. He joked that Sunny was starring in a real-life financial heist movie and didn't even know she was the main character. It was brutal, and viewers couldn't get enough. Tyrus hit it home with a single line: if you're going to act like the voice of truth and justice, don't be surprised when people start reading your receipts. And right now, Sunny's receipts looked like they were printed on red flags. This wasn't just about a financial scandal anymore. It had turned into a full-blown credibility crisis that The View couldn't laugh off or shout over. Meanwhile, Sunny kept doing what she always does, showing up to The View like nothing happened, wearing that same smug expression, still wagging her finger at the world. But something had changed. The audience could feel it. The laughter on set felt thinner. The outrage felt forced. And every time Sunny opened her mouth, people weren't hearing her opinions. They were seeing a giant blinking headline: $400 million lawsuit. The charm was gone. The authority cracked. And what made it worse was the contrast. While Sunny sat there pretending to be untouched by the chaos, Greg and Tyrus looked like they were having the time of their lives. Greg with his signature smirk, Tyrus dropping calm, crushing one-liners like he was dismantling a building with his bare hands. They weren't just mocking her, they were peeling back the layers of her entire public persona. And the viewers? They were eating it up. This wasn't just some celebrity scandal anymore. It had become a symbol of something bigger, the end of fake moral superiority, the collapse of the do as I say, not as I do media elite. And Sunny, whether she liked it or not, had become the face of that downfall. Now, here's where it gets even messier. Tyrus took the gloves off completely and turned his focus straight on The View itself. He said the show wasn't a place for real conversations anymore. It had turned into a staged performance of outrage, with everyone pretending to care while hiding their own mess. He called it a soap opera with better lighting and worse writing. And you know what? It stuck. He painted a picture of Sunny sitting on that stage, preaching empathy and ethics to millions, while back at home, her husband was allegedly running a financial disaster big enough to bankrupt a small country. It wasn't just embarrassing, it was a total collapse of everything she claimed to represent. Greg added his own twist to it. He compared Sunny's lectures to a morality play where the lead actress forgot her lines but still insisted on being the star. He joked that The View should come with financial subtitles. This opinion was brought to you by someone whose bank account rage quit. The punchlines kept coming, but behind all the humor was a brutal truth. If you sell yourself as a symbol of justice and responsibility, people will hold you to that standard. And when you fail that hard, there's no hiding behind makeup and microphones. The curtain was pulled back, and the audience finally saw the mess for what it was. And just when you thought the spotlight on Sunny couldn't get any hotter, Greg and Tyrus turned it into a full-on roast, served with extra sarcasm and zero mercy. Greg painted Sunny as the ultimate hypocrite. He said watching her lecture America about fairness while her household was sinking into financial ruin was like getting fitness tips from someone eating cake in a hot tub. And honestly, it hit. Viewers started to see the cracks, not just in Sunny's brand, but in The View itself. Even past co-hosts got dragged into the mess. Greg mentioned how Meghan McCain, a conservative voice on the show, was constantly attacked and pushed out, while Sunny and others, who he called race baiters, were allowed to stay no matter what outrageous things they said. He claimed The View didn't want balance. They wanted a stage to scream at white America while pretending it was some kind of justice movement. Tyrus took that even further. He said if The View really wanted to clean house, they'd stop protecting people who inject race into every conversation, even when it had nothing to do with race. He said Sunny used identity as a shield, even when the real issue was her husband's actions and her silence about them. It wasn't just a takedown of one person anymore. Greg and Tyrus were tearing apart the entire system of selective outrage and protected narrative. Sunny was just the loudest example of it. At this point, the whole thing felt less like a scandal and more like a televised autopsy. And Sunny was the one on the table. Greg and Tyrus weren't just mocking her, they were exposing the entire media bubble she lives in. Tyrus described it perfectly. A world where elite commentators sit high up in their fancy New York studios, wagging their fingers at average Americans, pretending they've got all the answers. But behind the cameras, their lives are just as messy, just as flawed, if not worse. Greg joked that if hypocrisy had a theme song, Sunny would be dancing to it in a feather boa. He wasn't exaggerating. Her entire brand was built on telling people how to think, how to vote, how to behave. But now, thanks to her husband's alleged financial chaos, she was being seen for what she really was. Just another elite voice preaching from a collapsing pedestal. Tyrus hit one final point that really stuck. This wasn't just Sunny's story. She was just the latest example of a much bigger problem, a media world filled with people who demand perfection from everyone else while never looking in the mirror. The whole thing had turned into an episode of Do As I Say, Not As I Do, starring a woman who claimed to stand for justice while the IRS, the courts, and the public started asking some very different questions. And viewers, they were no longer tuning in for inspiration. They were watching for the next train wreck. And still, through all of it, Sunny didn't back down. No apologies, no humility, just more lectures, more finger pointing, like the entire scandal wasn't sitting right there with a $450 million price tag attached. She returned to The View with that same air of self-importance, as if nothing had changed. But something had changed. Everything. Because now, every time she spoke, people weren't just hearing her words. They were seeing the chaos underneath. They were seeing court documents. They were seeing headlines. They were seeing a woman scolding America while standing on a stage built from bounced checks and bad decisions. Greg moved on, satisfied like a cat who already ate the canary. Tyrus returned to his usual calm, watching and waiting for the next fraud and pearls to step into the spotlight. But Sunny, she kept performing, still judging, still preaching. Only now the audience sees the subtitles running across the screen every time she talks. This opinion is brought to you by someone whose finances just rage quit. This wasn't just a scandal, it was a cultural X-ray. A brutal reminder that the louder someone shouts about morality on TV, the more you should check what's happening behind the scenes. And in Sunny's case, behind that perfect makeup and polished speeches was a financial mess loud enough to drown out anything she had to say. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Also, drop your thoughts in the comments. See you on the next one.